Hey folks, it's Tyler Buckheit, the plow guy, coming to you with our first video showing how to take a wheel off of an enclosed clutch plow. Now this is a 2-bottom model 44. It needs some repair on the rim. It's a question I get quite often about how to remove the wheel on the clutch side of the plow. If you're not familiar with the way it's set up, it's sort of like a Chinese finger puzzle. It's a little bit difficult. What I'm doing to start with is I'm jacking up the plow on the frame, and the reason for this is you want to release all the tension on the clutch lifting mechanism so that we can disassemble part. Okay, Tyler back again. We've got the hubcap off the wheel, which is just 3 bolts right here like so. That's easy to remove, right? Alright, come around. We're going to show you back here what I did before we try to remove the wheel. So I've jacked the frame up like I said earlier, and that relieves this pressure on this lifting strap that goes from the master lever down to your clutch bell crank. Disconnected that, just simply a cotter pin and some washers there. And the reason for doing that is I'm going to push, this is the axle on the plow that you can see on the other end, and it's going to push this out so we can just engage the collar, which is right here. This is a collar that's already been out. This is what's inside. Your wheel actually is a tapered hub inside the wheel, fits onto here, and we simply have to engage this. The end of this sticks out about a ½ inch or maybe 5/8 past the wheel hub. We want to engage that with our piece of metal and a sledgehammer to knock it out of the wheel and get it off. A lot of folks make the mistake of trying to put a puller on this hub and push the axle, and all they're doing is pushing the axle, really not gaining anything. So tools that I've used so far: 13/16 wrench for the square nuts that were on here. I've used a pair of pliers to get the cotter pin loose in the back, and now I've got a punch and a hammer. Sometimes this is needed, sometimes not, to knock the pin through that retains your collar, and it only goes through one way. It's got a little hit on the pin. And by the way, it's a good idea to have plenty of rags or shop towels for this job. These are usually pretty greasy. There's the pin that retains the collar. There's the adjusting collar, which is on here to adjust how tight the axle is in the housing. It's got these varied steps on the collar, as you can see, for that purpose. And there's usually some shim washers behind it. You want to make sure you get all those shim washers off. Now I'm going to push this axle right into the hub. You see how I did that? I push it virtually flush with the end. The reason for that, and the reason we disconnected the lifting strap, is to get this out of the way, because if you drive on the axle, you've accomplished nothing. So what I'm going to do, I've got a piece of metal, something solid, and it's got to be thin enough to go through the bolts. These bolts don't come out. They are retained in this collar behind your wheel. You can't get them out until you remove the wheel. So I've got a nice 8-pound sledge. I'm going to try not to smack my finger while I'm talking. So what you want to do is put a bucking bar in here. You don't want to hit it direct with a hammer. That's pretty hard and it can break. So you back it up. Easier to do when you're not trying to talk. Now let's see if our wheel is loose. Wouldn't you know it's not. Alright, so the pause in the video was you needed a helper or an assistant for this. Much easier to do with some help. So I held this piece of metal so my videographer Alex, my brother, could take a sledge and hit right on here to knock this loose. Now that it's loose, the hub is now inset into the rim. It simply just comes right off. Now your axle will drop down. Gravity is always a factor in that. So I've got my wheel off. You notice it's a tapered fit. And I will point out, this is very common around the valve stem to be rusted out on these. It seems like the clutch wheels, for whatever reason, have a higher mortality rate or more susceptible to rust. Don't really know why, so we're going to repair this one. Now if you want to get into your clutch, so let's just say you disassembled your clutch because your return lever won't come back. Or your lever won't return because you have a broken spring inside. So to disassemble this, if you want, this is a grease zerk in here. There we go. you simply screw it out and you spin this collar. Of course, I can't really do it with the grease zerk in until these notches lined up with the tapered splines. Simply pull that off. Going further, to open up this gear case, there's these bolts all the way around the gear case. You remove them. You can gently tap the housing with a hammer, pull the housing off, and you can see your springs and whatnot inside. Let's pan over here. I've actually got one sitting apart. This is what you'll find on the inside of your enclosed clutch assembly. The axle sitting in there. You'll notice here's a spring. It's clearly broken. If this spring is broken, a lot of times the symptoms will be you'll trip the clutch, your lever still goes back to home, but it might click or maybe ride up partially and then fall right back down in the ground. It won't lift completely if this little spring's broken. If your lever won't return home, this spring right in here sometimes is broken, or if someone's tried unscrewing this bolt head, it sometimes can back. There's a threaded plug in the spring. It can unthread that, and then your spring is disengaged. So it can either be that or your spring is actually broken. I'm hoping to have new ones available here soon. So that kind of concludes the video. Hopefully it was helpful, and good luck, and wear gloves and involve a friend to avoid smashed fingers.